Today we're going to take a little walk around the region of Abbotsbury, with a little part of that being on Chesil Beach, which is just down here. So yeah, this is Chesil Beach down here, the Abbotsbury part. This is where we started when we did our gravel survey last year. So we'll be having a look at some of the plants and other things to look at on this little walk. Friends and foes. So the first one is a friend, and it's just coming up here on the right. So this plant here is called Alexander's, and this has appeared in various videos before. This is a plant that's edible. It's in the carrot family, so we have to be careful because the carrot family's got some really nasty ones in it, and some plants that look quite similar to this. So this is Alexander's. These flower buds and the stalks and the young parts of the growth are edible. Strong flavour of celery and slight aniseed. It pickles well. We did a lacto fermented pickle a year or two ago, and that was really good with this and some three-cornered leek, I think it was. So this is called Alexander's. The common name Alexander's comes from a corruption of part of the Latin name, or part of the botanical name, which I think is Olisatrum, and that sounds a bit like Alexander, and so that's how that came about, I think. So yeah, this plant here, Alexander's, quite coarse, large leaflets on it. Very typical carrot family leaf form, bipinnate leaves here, but quite large, slightly glossy, fresh green leaves. And this one's got I suppose this is quite similar in appearance to hemlock water dropwort, which is deadly poisonous, and you don't want to pickle that. So we'll have a look at hemlock water dropwort, because I'm sure we'll see some along the way. But anyway, yes, this is Alexander's. Quite easily recognised, actually. The flower form is different as well. So the umbels of flowers on Alexander's are kind of rounded, pale green. They look a bit like little cauliflowers, especially when they're a little bit less developed than this. The unopened flower buds kind of sometimes look a little bit like cauliflowers. Well, they do to me anyway. Anyway, I'm lagging behind now, so I'm going to catch up with Jenny. We're going for a walk along the back of Chesil Beach this way, I think. So we're on Chesil Beach, and this is the Abbotsbury part. This is all very familiar. So we have to do a handful of gravel survey. This is what it looks like at Abbotsbury. And if you recall what we saw when we were at West Bay a week or two ago, this is quite a lot larger than the gravel at West Bay and Burton Bradstock and Hythe. So we're on the back of Chesil Bank here. We're not going up over onto the top because our walk takes us inland. What you doing, doggo? You got a rock. So just rounding this corner, that's St Catherine's Chapel up there. We've been there in another video. We've got a sign here. Long time viewers of the channel will understand the significance of this thing. Coast Path, Abbotsbury Swannery. So we're going along here. So we're leaving Chesil Beach now, and we're taking a path that's taking us slightly inland. More friends and foes here. So wild arum, interesting plant, but definitely in terms of foraging, that is a foe. That one will make you hurt and could possibly kill you if you manage to eat enough. stinging nettles, looking really lovely and fresh. They need another couple of weeks, I think, before they're pickable. And then in the background, this is cleavers, I think. Let's just check that's cleavers. Also known as sticky willy. Goosegrass. Cleavers, I believe, cleavers is related to coffee. And some people have roasted the seeds of cleavers to make a coffee substitute. I've tried it in the past, it was a bit disappointing, but that might be my fault. Maybe we'll try that again this year. Here's a plant that is a definite foe. This is hemlock water dropwort. So this is, as you can see, if you found this growing together with Alexanders, you could make a mistake and pick some of this. It is more finely cut foliage than Alexanders, but it's growing quite close together with it. This is just a little bit further inland, so there's less salt here. Alexanders tends to prefer slightly marine sort of aspect. This is more of a marshland plant. This is hemlock water dropwort, but I dare say if we looked hard enough we'd find these two things growing right next to each other on the perimeter or on the periphery of the two zones that these two plants prefer. So don't pick hemlock water dropwort. I may have mentioned that just once or twice before on the channel. So this is not the Fleet Lagoon, this is just a smaller lagoon that's on the back of the Chesil Bank here, just a little bit of wetland, but this is not connected to the Fleet Lagoon. The Fleet Lagoon starts further up. So yeah, we get a better view of St Catherine's Chapel here in a little pillbox, a little World War II pillbox up there on the hill. But we won't be going in there today because I don't think our path takes us right past it. In fact, I don't know if there is a footpath right past it. Yeah, so we're going to go through this valley here. Lovely little stream just running down here. It runs out into the wetland down there at the back of Chesil Beach, into that little lagoon, or possibly lake. Actually, it must be a lake because it's not actually directly connected to the sea. Primroses. Always a delight to see primroses. And lesser celandine there, the darker yellow flowers. So there's a little concrete pillbox up there on the hillside. If there's a footpath that branches off up to that pillbox, we'll go and take a look at it. I mean, I don't think there'll be very much to see. It's just a concrete box with windows, but being it slightly inland from Chesil Beach, it will be better preserved than the examples we saw down there. So the Fleet Lagoon here, the Dragon's Teeth, designed to prevent armoured vehicles traversing the beach at that point, on the back there. So that's a remnant of a World War II defensive structure. But yeah, this is the top end of the Fleet Lagoon. Abbotsbury, the Swannery is just over there somewhere. And I don't think, I've lost sight of St Catherine's Chapel because it's behind the brow of one of these hills. But we're going to walk up through this valley and back into the back of Abbotsbury village, and then we'll walk back through the village, stopping hopefully somewhere along the way for a cup of coffee and a slice of cake. That doesn't seem like too much to ask, does it? So I can see up here actually there is a finger post that appears to be pointing a footpath sign up towards that pillbox up there. So I'm hopeful we're going to be able to take a little detour and go and have a closer look at it. As I say, it hopefully should be a better preserved example than the really eroded ones we saw on Chesil Beach, where they've been battered by waves and weather and stones and wind and elements. In some cases there's not very much left of them. Some of them are actually buried by the gravel, and some of them are worn away or toppled over. Here's an interesting thing. This is often mistaken for morel mushrooms. These cones here. People often mistake this for morels. These are actually horsetails, mare's tails. A very ancient plant that would have been around pretty much unchanged since the time of the dinosaurs. And it produces tall, feathery, quill-like plants that are very tough. Actually got quite a lot of silica in them. Not grazed by anything very much, because the amount of silica in them causes teeth to get worn down. I should need to catch up with Jenny. I'm stopping to witter and point at things. Further inland, we're seeing a lot more of this hemlock water dropwort along this watercourse here. Very lovely, clean stream. Haven't seen any fish. But yeah, there is up here a finger post that indicates we should be okay to walk up that footpath and get close to that pillbox. I don't know that we'll be able to get into it because it looks like the footpath goes behind it. But we will divert from our planned course. Well, actually the nettles here, stinging nettles here, are looking almost big enough to pick. People fret about dogwee on stinging nettles. There are a couple of things to say about that. One is you can wash these things. The other is that you can pick them from a place where dogs wouldn't pee on. So a dog will pee on something that's sticking out. So don't pick them by a tree stump. But if you pick them from the back of the patch, most dogs are not going to wander into a patch of stinging nettles to pee on something at the back of them. So you could pick them from a place that's going to be less likely to be peed on. But as I say, you can wash these things. And our food grows in the outdoors where it's exposed to dirt and things like that. So it's kind of normal. This is a lovely valley. So the stream goes away from us over there, across through that bit there. A line of holm oaks there. So that's an evergreen oak. We've got one in the garden with our rookery in it. Not native to this land, but actually very much naturalised here. Evergreen oak produces acorns that are more or less edible without any soaking to get rid of tannins and whatnot. Eva's back on the lead now because we're crossing a pasture where we can't see any sheep, but they may be just over the brow of the hill or something like that. So Eva's under control when we're crossing farmland where we might encounter livestock. So we're coming up the hill now, up to where the pillbox is. And you might be wondering, what on earth was this here for? What's the purpose of building a concrete box on hillside like this? Well, when we get there, it will become apparent. So I don't think we'd better go in there. I don't think there's much to see if we did. But there we go. So this is a World War II defensive structure, a pillbox. I'll just get my breath back from walking up that hill. Why build this here? Well, look at the vantage point. So during World War II, invasion by sea was a realistic fear. So this pillbox here is a defensive outpost protecting the visible part of Chesil Beach here. So you can see the dragon's teeth over there. That looks like another pillbox there on the back of the bank. But yeah, the threat of invasion by sea during World War II was a reality. So these structures were built all around our coast to defend the kind of places where an invasion by sea might have been likely. So you can imagine that this flat bit of land here, even though it's quite boggy, would have been a potential place for landing craft to beach on the other side of the bank, come over the top, up the valley and inland that way. Anyway, that's the pillbox. Like I say, well, we're just going to have a peek through the door. But yeah, there's some bits of fence or something in there. Actually, it looks like it's full of mud as well. So we won't be going in there. But yeah, a small number of troops would be stationed in here to keep lookout, to keep watch over this part of the coast. And if we go over the brow of the hill here, which we're not going to do today, we'll find another one of these pillboxes on the other side of that little bank just there, and that would be defending the Fleet Lagoon there, for example, and that part of Chesil Beach. Not so much defending as just keeping watch, because obviously half a dozen people in here with rifles might not necessarily be able to put up much resistance to an invasion by sea, but they would certainly be able to call it in and get some support. Anyway, back down the hill now, and we'll resume our walk into Abbotsbury village. People often ask me about these stiles and things. This, usually if you find a stile like this is a stile, it's for crossing a fence, and this part's for humans to climb over. And in this case, it's got a little gate for dogs here. Hello. Hello. So usually when you see a stile like this, it indicates it's okay to cross the fence here, which also indicates that there is a footpath here. Finger posts like this are another obvious indicator of public footpaths. So that way goes to the Swannery, this way goes to Abbotsbury, and that way is where we just came from, down from Chesil Beach. But yeah, warning signs on gates, there's quite a lot of these, and they usually tell you what is expected of you. So we're crossing from a fenced off public footpath here into a sheep pasture. No sheep present or visible today, but they could, like I say, could be just over the brow of the hill there. So dogs are expected to be kept on a lead if there could be livestock. Up there, that's a buzzard. Quite a common bird of prey over the hills. Yeah, it's just circling on thermals. It's just looking for prey down here in the valley. There's a cock pheasant down there. I think that's probably a bit too large a prey for buzzards. Buzzards probably looking for rabbits, I should think. It might come over the top of us and we might get a better view of the buzzard. It's coming our way. There it goes. That's as close as we're going to get. That's probably just a few pixels on the camera, but anyway, that's a buzzard. Oh yes, there's a pair of them. That sound was a pheasant, by the way. They always sound a bit broken to me. A flat floodplain like this with loamy, sandy loam soil, favourite place of moles. So these are mole hills here, and further up off across the field there, so there's a colony of moles. Bit of pasture here goes to show you that there are sheep in this field, but you wouldn't necessarily see them straight away. I think, again, there's a finger post that indicates a path across the field over there. Eva! So it just goes to show you, the sheep are all in the shade for some reason. Obviously, that's where they want to be. But you could easily enter this field to use a footpath that crossed it, if there is one, and not see the sheep straight away. So we do get this thing actually where some people are very surprised that Eva's ever off the lead at all, because in some other parts of the world I think the convention is that you don't ever exercise dogs off the lead, but that's different here. There are places where it's permissible and safe to do that. And what kind of a life would she have if she couldn't run? Another pheasant. There was just a moment ago, just after I turned the camera off, there was an enormous commotion. Lots of pheasants making clucking and alarm sounds, and one flew across the path down there, and I think maybe one of those buzzards had actually taken a pheasant, judging by the amount of alarm sound. I didn't have the camera rolling, unfortunately, always the way, but there you go. This is a celandine flower here, doing what celandine flowers do the very best, which is collecting the sunshine. This is like a little reflector for the bees, and the spot inside of this flower is about 2 degrees warmer than the surrounding air, just because the little parabolic reflector, or pseudo parabolic reflector, of that flower creates a concentration of sunlight just where the pollination structures are for that flower. So the bee gets some nectar and gets a little bit of warmth, which is important for them at this time of year. The flower gets a pollination service. In a video that's coming up soon, or maybe already published by the time you're seeing this, we're going to measure that temperature difference. So another rather worn out finger post here. So Abbotsbury appears to be that way. If we went up here, we'd go to Village and Chapel Hill. We're back down that way to Chesil Beach. Which way are we going, Jenny?
Well, it was that way.
That way. Okay, so Abbotsbury this way. Another alarm sounding pheasant. They do, to me, sound like, I don't know if you ever had clockwork toys where you actually wound up a piece of clockwork mechanism, and sometimes if you overwound something like that, it would make this awful ratcheting sound, and the alarm call of a pheasant always sounds a bit like that to me. Water just streaming out of the hillside here. There's a little spring. This is false watercress, or fool's watercress. It's not true watercress. It is a carrot family plant, and I believe it's edible, but it tastes strongly of carrot. Doesn't taste like watercress. But again, we got hemlock water dropwort growing right next to it. Nettles are looking actually pickable here, so in the next week or two I think we might be doing something with stinging nettles. Well, it looks like we have to traverse a bit of mud here, but I've got the right boots on for it. Yeah, I think so. So there was a footpath sign up here, so even though we are walking through a farm, we'll stay on the track because that's where the footpath was indicated. But look at this. So is that a drainage channel, or is that a little stream? Why not both? The hills here are composed of quite porous materials, and so the rainwater that seeps into them and flows through the porous rocks just appears as little springs in the hillsides. Yes, it does. Okay, we'll go the other way then. So yeah, I think it was the other one that said village, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yep, we'll double back.
Oh no,
Yeah, no, we've gone the wrong way. We would have cut our walk rather short if we'd gone back up to the road and straight back to the car park. So back to somewhere down here, and we'll take the other branch of the footpath. Right, so as we were, we're going to go up this track. It's signposted Village and Chapel Hill. Beautiful daffodils there. These are actually quite close to the wild form of daffodils. These are a cultivar, I think, but the wild daffodils look a bit like this, with these flowers that never seem to be completely open, and they nod a little bit, they're looking downwards. The naming of the plant, Narcissus, the genus of the plant, Narcissus is the mythical individual who fell in love with their own reflection. So the downward looking aspect of the daffodils, the Narcissus flowers, I think is why they're so named, why they're called Narcissus, because they're looking down at their reflection as if in a pond. There's a red admiral butterfly there. Let's see how close we can get. Oh, it's gone. Just going to see if I can get back to it. There we go. We can see right through the windows of St. Catherine's Chapel from here. So coming into the back of Abbotsbury now, a few things to see here. This plant here, Spring Snowflake. This is the plant that I think someone on that Reddit thread that I mentioned in a previous video about wild garlic, I think this is the plant they've picked, believing it to be few flowered leek. This is nothing related. This is related to daffodils, and it's toxic, as are daffodils. Probably worth mentioning that daffodils are toxic, especially in light of the fact that you might have recently seen them alongside. There was a news story quite recently where Tesco was selling bunches of daffodil flowers in the stir-fry vegetables section in their stores. And of course most people probably would realise that the daffodils are there as cut flowers, not as vegetables, but it is, I think, really foolish expecting all of their customers to know what those are and that they are not edible when you present them alongside spring onions and green beans and asparagus and other things which are the same shape and size and are edible. I can imagine that somebody who didn't know daffodils are toxic might just assume there is some new fad where we eat flowers. That's what some vegetables are, is flowers. Anyway, coming into the village of Abbotsbury now. A lot of the buildings here constructed from this local yellow sandy limestone, sandstone or limestone. Let's just take a moment or two to appreciate the play of light on this stone and brick wall here. So you'll notice that the doors are all painted the same colour here. So all of the doors on these cottages have got navy blue doors. And I think I'm right in saying that indicates that these are not owned by the people who live in here. What a gorgeous little cottage. Look at this thing. How about that? But yeah, I think the colour of the paint on the doors, all of the doors are painted this dark blue, I think indicates that these belong to the estate owner and they're rented. So I think this is all owned by Ilchester Estates. So all of the doors are painted this estate blue. Nice little water fountain there. I wonder how old that actually is. Oh, it's got a date on it. When the traffic passes, we'll go and have a look. So this would have been a little water fountain for people to water their horses, perhaps. 1859. Victorian. Not all of the features here. That trough I think might not be original. I think that trough might be a later addition, but this would have been a little water fountain there for public use, for people to water their horses, or perhaps, you know, get a drink of water themselves. Ah, interesting. Now these doors are not painted blue, so perhaps these cottages here are privately owned. Or maybe I'm wrong about all of that. Actually, there are other reasons why villages sometimes have limited colours in their palette. There are sometimes in quaint villages there are restrictions on the colours you can use to paint your house. Local bylaws or council regulations or parish council regulations or something like that. So that could be the thing that's the limiting factor here instead of estate ownership. I'll look it up when I get home. We're going to have to cross over here, are we? So we have to cross over here. It's an interesting thing actually. This village obviously was built before cars existed, and so the roads through here are not necessarily suited to motorised traffic. We'll cross back over again to pick up the pavement on this side. So that was part of the village of Abbotsbury. We've looked at other parts of it in another video, which I will link in the video description and this card. We're now just going to walk back down the hill to the subtropical gardens and probably go in the cafe there, I think, to get a cup of coffee before we go back to the car. So that's actually the valley I think we walked up through. Down there, it's Chesil Beach in the distance and the sea. It's between the land and the sky. And we cross back over here and then up the hill and then off down towards the subtropical gardens. We visited the subtropical gardens last year. It was quite nice. It's quite amazing what they've got growing there, because it's nestled in a tiny little warm microclimate down more or less at sea level and in a little valley that's got a sunny aspect, and so it's got a slightly warmer climate. Okay, and then I think the pavement runs out here, and I think we cross over here and there's a footpath that goes off the road a little bit, which is probably safer for us. Is this where we go? Yeah. So we cross here and there's a footpath that takes us away from the road a little bit for safety. Yeah. And so we're back to seeing Alexander's again here. This is all Alexander's. So are we going to find Alexander's and hemlock water dropwort growing right next to each other? I'm surprised we don't see it down here. I bet it is down here, because there's a fresh water course here. I think I see it just down there. Yes, I can see some hemlock water dropwort through the gap of those trees there. I don't know how well you'll be able to see that on camera. And then Alexander's here. So it just pays to demonstrate how similar looking plants might grow together, and you have to be careful. I know I'm always stressing how careful you need to be when foraging, but it really is important. This is red dead nettle down here. That's an edible plant. You can make, it's edible as a kind of, you know, as a herb, or you can make infusions out of it, make a sort of tea. So that's the valley we walked up through, and in fact you can see from here right down to Chesil Beach, and again we can see the dragon's teeth, or at least I can. I hope they show up on camera. St Catherine's Chapel up there on the hill. That's the farm we tried to walk through and couldn't get through, or decided not to go through. And our path goes back this way. We could glean some wool and do some needle felting. That's natural wool that's just snagged on there. So there have been sheep in this field at some point, and they've rubbed up against the barbed wire, and little bits of wool have torn off on the fence. So I have seen people collect this all up before now and do needle felting. Perhaps that's a thing we'll do sometime, but not today. And it might be interesting to collect up enough wool to try a different kind of felting and make a hat. I will add that to the ideas list. Down here, that looks like a bee on that dandelion flower, but that's actually a bee mimic fly. It's not a bee at all. That is a bee mimic. So it's a fly that just looks like a bee. Some of them are actually parasitic on bees, on solitary bees. Some of them, I think, just mimic bees because that implies there is a sting in the tail to potential predators. More molehills here. So molehills are often used by archaeologists because moles are digging up the soil here and bringing it up to the surface. And if there are archaeological finds in here, the moles will often bring them to the top. When we were walking around a Roman fort somewhere up country one time, I remember, with Jenny's sister, who's an archaeologist, I just happened to kick over a molehill and found a little piece of pottery, and Jenny's sister identified it as a piece of Samian ware. Here's a bumblebee. Feeding on red dead nettle. And humming around. Here's another plant we haven't talked about today. Crow garlic. I thought we would have seen more of this, but there we go. Onion family plant. I find this very recognizable now because it just stands out. It looks like grass, but it's got this kind of bluish tint to it, bluish glaucous appearance to it. This is crow garlic. It's just getting past the point where you'd want to pick it now. Actually, no, still pretty good. Delicious, wild edible, this one. It's a kind of onion. Now, here's the thing. So in the wild garlic video, I talked about how the smell test could be unreliable, because if you've been picking wild garlic, then your hands might already smell of wild garlic, and you might think that the thing you've just picked is garlic when it's not. So the workaround for that is smell your hand before you do the smell test. So if my hand doesn't smell of garlic now, and I'm going to pick a piece of this crow garlic. I know this is crow garlic anyway. I'm very confident this is, because I'm very familiar with the plant. But let's suppose I wasn't, and I wanted to know if that was garlic. So I've just crushed a bit on my fingers, and now I can smell garlic. So there you go. That's how to do the smell test reliably, or more reliably than just grabbing handfuls of things, is smell your fingers first. If they don't smell of garlic, then take the thing you want to test, crush it, and see if you can smell garlic that way. And that way you won't be misled by cross-contamination if you've been picking lots of things that day. Oh, and I think we've got something else here. Three-cornered leek, pretty sure. Let's see if I'm right. It does. No, it doesn't feel quite right for three-cornered leek. It's a bit broader leaf than that, but it does look like an allium. So with my uncontaminated hand, we'll just test that. Doesn't smell of garlic. Pick and crush a leaf. No, doesn't smell of garlic. So that is not three-cornered leek. That's interesting. That does look like an allium, but it's not. Obviously it's a monocot because it's got these strap-like leaves, but there you go. So that one fooled me for a moment. Of course, I would never be so incautious as to pick something and eat it without being really sure what it is, but just goes to show you that that one fooled me for a moment. But here's the point. So if I had picked that second plant with the first hand, with my left hand, that was already smelling of garlic from the crow garlic, I could potentially have made a mistake there if I still smelt the crow garlic on my hand, even though I was crushing whatever that second plant was. So just a little afterthought really about the smell test is, so I've just crushed a unknown plant in my hand. Who knows what poisons are now on my hand? In this particular case, I'm fairly confident that nothing here is particularly harmful just to be on my skin. But if this was, for example, wild arum, and I wasn't sure whether it was wild arum or wild garlic, my hand would now be starting to blister. So there is one potential drawback or downfall of the smell test. Again, little clumps of crow garlic just down here. Crow garlic, I think, is possibly my favourite wild allium. It's a really, really nice taste. It tastes like roasted garlic, even when it's not roasted. That's the end of the footpath. This now takes us onto the little quieter side road that takes us back down to Chesil Beach, where we started, and past the subtropical gardens, where I think we will pop in for a cup of tea or coffee and a piece of cake, a picture of which is now on your screen. So thanks for joining us today on this wander around Abbotsbury. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.